All right, as everybody continues to funnel in, I'll take you through my intro spiel. Um, First of all, we're happy that you can be with us today. We hope you and your families are hanging in there during this weird time. Let's begin with some introductions and a few housekeeping items. My name is Deneen. I'm the Director of Marketing here at Technology Advisors. And with me today, we have our trainer and business analyst and Creatio expert, Megan. And usually we also have our other Creatio expert, Chris, but Megan's going to fly solo today as we dive into this marketing Creatio topic because she's a champion. So thank you times two, Megan. She is quite the mastermind of this, and we're very happy that she's able to do this today. If you've been to a webinar user group with us before, you know that we'll always send you a follow-up email the next day with the recording and any links or documents from the presentation. So you don't have to stress about taking notes or capturing any links. We will make sure that you get those. As always, if you have any questions throughout, feel free to enter those into that chat area and we'll answer those as we go along. So with that, I would like to turn the floor over to Megan to get us started.
All right, thanks, Deneen. So today in our user group, we're talking about the power of marketing Creatio, and we're going to do a quick product overview with a few slides to kind of set the stage for what marketing Creatio can do, and then we're going to walk through a demonstration of the product. And then as always, we wrap up by talking about new releases, upcoming events, and taking care of any questions that were not answered previously. Although do feel free to submit your questions along the way if there's something applicable to what we're discussing. So Marketing Creatio is one of the core products that Creatio offers along with sales and service and studio. So it's part of the core Creatio application. And actually I'm going to go ahead and switch to the next slide, which kind of lays out in a little bit more detail, all of the pieces of the different products that Creatio offers. I think one of the most important things about marketing Creatio, at least from my perspective, is that it is the exact same core product. It's part of your same Creatio environment if you're also using Sales Creatio or Service Creatio or Studio. So if you are using sales and marketing, for example, your sales and marketing teams are working out of the exact same system with the exact same database. And so you don't have any of the issues that you might run into sometimes with other systems where you're trying to sync data back and forth between a sales system and a marketing system. Because everything is in the exact same system, that problem just doesn't exist. Everything's already right there. Before we dive into what Marketing Creatio can do, a couple of recognitions that the product has had. So besides being recognized as a leader in the CRM space, Creatio has also been recognized as a leader in the Gartner Quadrant for CRM lead management and as a strong performer in the Forrester Wave for B2B marketing automation platforms. So while you probably see or hear more about Creatio as a sales or CRM platform, Creatio does also put a lot of effort into building their marketing platform, and it is recognized by the analysts. So what does the Creatio marketing product offer? Well, first of all, you're going to have that 360-degree customer view that you have in any CRM platform. And again, here I think that's where having everybody on one platform really comes through, because your marketing person and your salesperson are both going to have that same complete view of the customers and prospects that they're working with. So you're going to be able to see all of the communication history, all of the interactions that everyone on the team is having with each of your customers or each of your prospects, as well as the ability to see that marketing data integrated into that customer view. And we'll see that when we take a look at the demonstration. Similarly, you've got the segmentation tools in Creatio. You're probably all familiar with the folders and filtering functions that are in Creatio. If not, we have done a previous user group on that, so check that out on our website, and that will give you a lot of great examples of how you can use folders and dashboards. Again, the powerful thing here to me is the fact that because your marketing team is working out of the same platform as your sales team, anything you might want to segment on is already available in the platform. Something that we see time and time again with customers who are using integrations is you build an integration between your sales platform and your marketing platform, and that's great. It's usually there's something to use as a starting point with basic mapping. You can usually add your own fields to it. And you start going along, you start using the system, and 2 months later you realize, oh, well, I want to segment on this data point, but we didn't think to include that integration in our integration. And therefore you've got to go back and reconfigure the integration again to start syncing that data over. And that cycle sort of just repeats over and over again as time goes on, because your business systems are changing, your needs are changing, and so your integration has to change along with it. Again, with Creatio being an integrated platform where you've got sales, marketing, and service all working in one database, in one system, all of the data that your sales team is collecting is automatically available to your marketing team. All of the data that your service team is collecting is automatically available to your marketing team, and vice versa. And so things like segmenting on order history or website activity or clicks or opens or any sort of custom fields that you're collecting or opportunity pipeline status, all of that data is immediately available in the system for segmenting on. Marketing Creatio does have the capability to do website behavior tracking, meaning that you can put code on your web pages and be able to see when your contacts are visiting your web pages. You can see what pages they've been on, when they were there, all of that good information. Many of you are probably using Sales Creatio already. If you are, you may already be familiar with the lead management process. That capability is also available in the marketing product. So different businesses have different business processes in terms of who is in charge of qualifying leads and managing leads. Sometimes that capability or that responsibility falls on the sales team, sometimes it falls on the marketing team, sometimes a little bit of both. And so both the Sales Creatio and the Marketing Creatio products have the same access to the leads section in Creatio to use the lead management tools. Marketing Creatio, as you probably would expect, includes a strong email marketing component. This includes integration with a professional email service provider. What that means is your emails are not actually being sent from your company's email server. They're being sent through this email service provider that's going to help with things like performance of those emails. You do have to do a little bit of setup when you first start using Marketing Creatio to allow the email service provider to send emails on your domain's behalf, but there's some really clear instructions about how to do that. The email marketing tool has a visual content designer with a library of ready-to-use templates and blocks to make it easy for you to start building your emails. There's capabilities for doing dynamic content, which I'll show you a little bit more about when we're doing the demonstration, as well as doing split testing if you want to compare one email versus another and see which performs better. You can also see email stats like clicks and opens, as well as a click heat map, and does support UTM codes if you're using UTM codes with Google Analytics. Besides sending out just individual email blasts, Marketing Creatio also offers the capability to do campaigns, which are multi-step events or multi-step marketing campaigns that may have a combination of several emails, may also interact with landing pages that you've built or events that you're planning to determine how to transition from one step to the next. So this allows you to do things like determine which email to send next based off of how someone's reacted to the previous email. Have they opened it? Have they clicked on the links? That sort of thing. Marketing Creatio does include some event management capabilities with the ability to plan and manage your events with things like tracking the dates, budget, who's registered for the event, and so on. And again, that can tie into your campaigns. And then because this is part of the Creatio product, all of the collaboration tools that are built into Creatio are part of Marketing Creatio as well. So that's going to include things like your communication panel, ability to work with tasks and calendar, synchronize with Microsoft Exchange at Google, telephony integration, and so on. as well as really important last bullet point there, analytics, which we will touch on in the demo as well. So let me go ahead and pull up Creatio, and we'll take a look at how this all looks in the product. So again, for those of you who potentially are using Creatio today, but maybe not using the marketing product, you can see that I am just working inside of my Creatio environment. For organizational purposes, a lot of times people will segment or separate out the sales versus marketing functions in different workplaces, although you're not required to do that. The marketing content or the marketing functionality is only available to be used by users who have a marketing license. So it is a separate license for your users, sales users versus marketing users. We'll talk a little bit more about that at the end. But if you do have a user who needs access to both sales and marketing functions, they would have to have a license for each. All right, so I'm going to go roughly in the same order as the slides went, with a little tweak here and there as we go through the demonstration. So I'm going to go ahead and start with that 360-degree view of your customer. And so I'm going to go ahead and just pull up a contact here. And again, as you can see, if you're using Creatio today, you're probably very familiar with this view, at least, you know, generalities. This is a demo environment, so your own company system probably looks a little different. But you can see if I'm in the marketing product, I have the exact same contact functionality, the exact same account functionality as well, so that I can go and understand my customers, go and understand my prospects, who they are, what they're doing, what they're working on. The history section is also going to have my marketing activities included as part of my contact or account history that would get added when you start using the marketing product. So that's going to include things like those website events, that website tracking functionality. This allows you to determine which pages on your website you want to track. Could be some of them, it could be all of them, however you want to do that. And then it will show you when your known contacts visit those pages through a cookie functionality. Email activity, so you can see which emails someone has received from your marketing functionality, from your bulk emails. And you can also see how they responded to those emails. Did they open them? Did they click on the links? How many times have they done each of those things? If this contact has been part of any of those multi-step marketing campaigns, you can see which campaigns they were part of, how far along in the process they got, potentially to the end, potentially not, depending on how that campaign was working or even is still working. It could be something that's still in progress, and you can see what step they're on in the campaign. And then you can also see that event activity. So any events that this contact has been associated with, whether that was inviting them, having them register, having them attend, you would see that in your response status. How were they connected to this event? What was their relationship to it? All right. Also want to just take a quick moment to talk about segmentation. Again, I'm not going to go too deep onto this one because we do have an entire user group all about doing folders and dashboards. But this is obviously really important in the marketing world to be able to segment on your data. So again, working within Creatio, all of the data that's here is going to be available for segmenting. To help you get started, the marketing product does include some basic folders as starting points, as examples for you. Things like they opened an email, they unsubscribed, they clicked a link in the email. And you can use those as starting points to just sort of see how those folders were built out. They're pretty general, so you probably wouldn't use them in quite that generality or that level of generality. But you know, it's a good starting point to be thinking about and understanding how you can use some of that marketing activity in your segmenting. You can also use any of your data, you know, on your customer profile. So things like, is this person a customer versus are they a prospect? You could use that as an example in your filters, in your segments. Have they ordered anything or not? How recently have they ordered something? Are they part of an active opportunity? So any of that full profile of information that you're tracking within Creatio, all of that's available for segmenting. And just to do a quick example of this, let's go ahead and build out a new folder. So let's say we want to do something like everyone who opened an email last month. So I could go ahead and filter based off of their email response. And let's say I want to use opens. So I want them to have opened at least one email. And then I want to filter it by time period. Right now, this would just be any email ever. I could filter it to a specific email if I wanted to, everyone who opened this specific email, or I'm going to use the start date of the emails to just do it by time. So any emails that have started last month, I want to find everyone who opened one of those emails. And I can quickly, let's turn off that other filter, apply this search, and I can see the lists that I'm generating. Now, again, I could take this further and add more criteria in here, only customers, only prospects, only people in a certain industry. Any of that data that I'm tracking and collecting inside of Creatio, I could add that into my filter here. But let's just go ahead and keep this simple. And an email last month. Now, that was set up as a dynamic filter, meaning that that time period is going to stay dynamic. Right now, it would be everyone who opened an email in March. In what I guess tomorrow is May 1st. So tomorrow it would switch to everyone who opened an email in April. And so it is dynamically updating the participants or the members of that list based off of those criteria. You can also create static folders where you specifically add or remove someone from that folder. So I was playing around with this test folder earlier. You can see I've got myself in here a couple times as a contact. And so if I wanted to add someone to that folder, let's just say, for example, I want to add Alexander. I can add him to a static folder specifically by putting him in, and that would make him a member of this folder as well. And then if I didn't want him in here anymore, I could remove him the same way. So you have the capability to have both those dynamic lists. Every time someone meets that criteria, go ahead and put them in that group, as well as those static lists. I want to manually manage who is or who is not in this group. All right, so far so good. I don't see any questions yet. So I'm going to go ahead and continue on and talk about emails. So let's go over to the email section. This is where we're going to design our emails. In some cases, it's also where we're going to send our emails. It's where we're going to see the statistics of all of the emails that we're sending. So pretty much everything email related is going to be here. Within the email section, let's go ahead and just create a new email. There are two different sort of categories of emails, and this relates to how you're planning to send that email out. So a bulk email is an email that's going to be sent just a standalone single email. A trigger email is an email that's going to be part of a campaign that may have multiple emails in it. And it just changes some of the parameters that are used within the email, so they ask you right up front which one you're creating. We're going to go ahead and create a bulk email. Starts really simple. I'm just going to give my email a name. This is an internal name that would only be seen inside of Creatio. It's not going to be on the email itself in any way. And then once I've named my email, I can go ahead and go into the designer. So this is where I'm going to actually build out my email message. And I can do this in a couple of different ways. First of all, I could have a pre-built email template of exactly what the entire email is going to look like as a starting point. For example, let's say I send out an email a newsletter once a month. I could save that newsletter as a template, and every time I need to go send that email out again, I just go into my templates list and I pull in that template, and it pulls everything in already set up for me, and I can just add my content to it. So that makes it easy if you're going to reuse that exact same format over and over again. Otherwise, if you're doing sort of more of a one-off email, you might still have pieces that you want to reuse. And that's where your block library comes in really handy. So when you get started, there'll be a whole bunch of Creatio blocks in here for you to use as a starting point, as examples. You can get rid of these once you've kind of built up your own blocks and you don't want them anymore, just by clicking the X to delete them. And then you can also create and save your own blocks. So I created this starfish block here earlier today, and I created a footer for my company address there for technology advisors. And I created this text and image block. And so I can drag these into my email. I can decide where I want to put them in the email in terms of ordering and things like that. And I can also reorder them later if I don't get them dropped into the exact place where I want them. And this gives me building blocks as a starting point for building that email. Now,
Megan,
those can be really specific in terms of like having the exact image that I already want in there, like this starfish image that I put in my header. Or they could be more general with placeholder text, a placeholder image, just as a starting point to kind of build the structure of it, but then allow me to add the content that I need as I go. Deneen, I'll get to that question in a few minutes.
you're on my mind.
I don't have to start with a pre-existing content block though either. I can also build my own designs, my own spacing, my own whatever I want in a block. And so if I want to do that, that's where this top section is going to come in. So I can drag out a new block, and it's just going to be a placeholder at first, and I'm going to start to define how I want that to look. So I've got a section in my block. Right now it's just a single column, but if I wanted to have 2 columns or 3 columns, I can go ahead and just add those in here. If I change my mind and I want to go back to 2, I can do that pretty easily. I can control the relative size of the columns if I want them equal. Really easy, just check the equalize box. But if I don't want them equal, I can come in and change the size of them, as well as things like the padding and the corner radius and the background and borders and so on. So lots of formatting options as well. Then I can go ahead and decide what I want to have in each of these blocks. So maybe I want an image on this side this time. And then I want some words over here on the left. And maybe I want a button below that. So I can just drag those things out. I can also drag those, by the way, into a template that I've pulled out of my library. So let's say I want to add a button to this one as well. I can easily do that. And so again, really that library is just giving you a starting point to make this as easy as possible. And you can also easily add things to that. So let's say now that I've built this block with the image and the text and the button, I want to put that into my library. I can go ahead and just save that, give it a name. So let's do image plus text plus button and save that. And now I've got that ready to use again in the future as well. And again, I could go as far into like putting actual text in here that I would reuse every time, putting an actual picture in here and saving that, or keeping it more general with just this placeholder stuff if that's more useful to me. So, you know, as little or as much customization of that block before you save it as you want. All right, let's simplify, make this a little easier, and just take that one guy back out and have just one here. So something like this image, I can link to a URL if I've got this image on my web server somewhere, or I can just upload a file from my computer. So any image that I want to use from my computer, I can go ahead and load that guy in there. When I'm doing my text, I can go ahead and put my text in right here. It's got pretty standard text editing capabilities, font, size, color, spacing, and so on. So however you want that text to look. If you want to insert, say, someone's name into your email to personalize it, that's going to use this macro function. And it comes in a couple of different flavors. There's a basic macro or a custom macro. Basically, the only difference between the two is the basic macro is some pre-built things that Creatio is guessing people might want to put into an email. A custom macro lets you insert anything you want from any of your Creatio fields. So if I look at the basic macros, it's just a couple of really simple options to help me get started. This is the full contact name, so maybe I just want to use their first name. I would go instead into my custom macros, and I want to pull something from the contact object or record, and I want to pull in their first name. So I would just pick the field that I want, and it will pull in the corresponding code that it needs in order to grab that data. For something like this button, I'm going to go ahead and give it what link I want to open. Again, I can change the font. I can change the color of the button. Change the font color because that got really hard to read now that I did that. Let's Let's make you like white or something. Nope, I did not do what I wanted. Yes, I did. There we go. Okay. You can tell I'm not actually a marketer because I'm sure Deneen could be like, oh yeah, blah, 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 blah. I got this already.
No, you're killing it. You're killing it.
And then I can also change the text. If I want to say, click here instead of call to action, I can change exactly what that button says, and it's going to size appropriately as I go. All right. I know there was a question in the chat about copying and pasting from Word. I have honestly not tried that before, so give me a minute to open up Word, and I will try it, and we'll see what happens. My suspicion is that it would work. I don't know how the formatting might come over. You might get a little bit of funky spacing or something. All right. I'm just going to type some random stuff into Word and see what happens if I copy and paste that into my email here. Yeah, okay, so that did pretty much what I'd expect it to do. Brought over in the font that I was using or something similar. Spacing is slightly different just because of how it represented it, but basically brought my text over from Word without a problem. One other thing that I want to show you guys is the dynamic content feature. So dynamic content means that you can have one email that you send out that looks different for different recipients. So this allows you to have one email for your reporting purposes. You can see all of your clicks and opens in a single email, but also to personalize that email a little bit to one audience versus another. So for example, let's just say instead of having this picture of someone in manufacturing, I want to send some other picture to people in a different industry. What I can do is I can take this, gotta get the right place, I can take this block and I can set up dynamic content. So in order to do that, I need to, I need to get to the rules piece. There it is. I need to get to the rules section and set up my rules first. So how am I to determine who's receiving which email? So this uses standard functioning or standard filter functioning. So let's say this is manufacturing. And so what I want to do is from the contact, I want to connect to the account object, and I want to check their industry. And hopefully manufacturing is an option in this list. Perfect, okay. And let's go ahead and do construction for that as well, why not? So if they're in manufacturing or construction, that's gonna be one of my groups. Construction, and let's save that. And then if I want to have other subgroups, I could have, one for banking, one for whatever other industry. I'm just going to go ahead and keep it as manufacturing and construction or everybody else. And so over here then, in my particular block, I'm going to use that rule. So I'm going to use the manufacturing and construction segment, and then I'm going to have some default content for everybody else. Once I've told Creatio that I want to use those rules for this block, you can see it now added some extra buttons here. So this is now the default email. I could switch over to the manufacturing and construction email and put some different stuff in there. So actually, I'm going to leave manufacturing and construction the way it is. I'm going to change my default email to have some other picture here. And I didn't really plan this ahead, so I don't really know what other picture I'm going to use. But let's just say I want to use this baby for whatever reason. I don't even know where that came from. And so my default email is going to have this cute little baby on it, and my manufacturing email is going to have this manufacturing looking guy. So when I send my email out, Creatio is going to look at each contact that it's sending the email to, check the industry on their account, and decide, am I sending them this version of the email, or am I sending them that version of the email? And I could make, as many parts of my email have that dynamic content as I want. I just did it on this block, but I could do it on other pieces as well. All right, continuing on, let's take a quick look at our email headers. So this could also be dynamic. I'm going to go ahead and just keep it the same for everybody, but if I want to send with a different subject line or different pre-header for different audiences, I could do that. This is where I'm going to set up who my email is coming from. Send it from me. What my email subject is going to be. I can use macros here if I want to put someone's name into the subject line, same as we did before. Check out our event. And then I can also set what the pre-header is going to be. So the pre-header is that preview that you see before you open an email. Will be great or something, whatever I want that to say. And again, any of those fields could also be dynamic if I want to have different values in them for my different audiences. And then I can also preview what the email looks like on a typical computer email client as well as the typical phone email client. So I can get an idea for what this email is going to look like if someone's looking at it on their computer, and what is it going to look like if someone's looking at it on their phone. I can see both of my different emails as well. Since I did have that dynamic content set up, I could see them both. Once I'm happy, I'll go ahead and save this email. From within here or back within the previous menu, I can test my email. I am getting a warning here. This goes back to some of that setup that I mentioned briefly earlier, where you need to allow the email service provider to send emails from your email domain. I have not set that up in my demo environment. So when I send my email, it's going to have different parameters that are going to make it look a little bit more spammy than it would if I had done the full setup on the email domain side. So again, from either here or back on kind of the main page, wherever I'm at when I'm ready to do this, I can send a test email. Either way, it's going to pop up asking me who to send it to. Send it to myself, although I closed my email, I just realized, so I'm not actually going to be able to show you these right away. Let me click on that and start that opening. And then do I want to test both versions of it or just one? As well as which contact do I want to use, because I had that macro where I'm inserting the contact's name. I need to pick which contact out of Creatio I'm going to use to pretend that I'm sending it to. So let's just send it to me. All right, so I'll click send. It will go ahead and prepare and send emails out pretty much immediately, so I should see them in my inbox momentarily, and when I see them pop up, I will let you know. While I'm waiting for that to come through, let's go ahead and take a quick look at how we define our audience for our emails. So typically this is going to be done using your folders. And so when you're thinking about your email audience, typically step one is to go to your contact section and create the folders that you need to define who you're going to send to. And then step two is just to add that folder into your audience. So I can come in here and I can find my test folder, for example, and I could bring those 3 people from my test folder into my email audience. I can add multiple folders, so depending on how I've defined those groups, I don't have to just add one if I want to send 3 or 4 different subgroups. I don't have to put them all into one folder first. I can add all 3 folders into my audience. And I can also add individual people. So if there's some specific person that I want to send to who maybe doesn't fit the criteria of my folder, I can also add an individual person into my email audience. All right, so looks like those emails came through. So let me go ahead and open those up. Here they are. So this warning about the sender of the message is because I didn't have that email domain set up where it's actually verified to send on my behalf. So I did have to tell it I could send on my behalf when I was setting this up earlier today. I already did that process, but it's not verified at the domain level. It's just verified with my individual email account. And so it comes through a little bit differently. You can see what that email looks like. You can see apparently my contact's name is John, which is a little strange, but that's what it is, I guess. And so it pulls that information in, and you can see all of that data here. If I put any links in here, the links will work. I could go ahead and click on that to test that the link opens what I want. That also, of course, opened on another page, but there it is. It's not going to be tracking those because it's just a test email. And I could obviously at this point go back into my designer and make changes, test again as many times as I needed to until I was happy with my email. Once I'm done with that, I will then decide how I'm going to send this email. Do I want to send it as soon as I click the button to send, or do I want to pick a time like 10 a.m. tomorrow morning or something like that to go ahead and send that email? So you can pick, what makes the most sense for your email to send it when you click the button or to send it later. If you do send it later, it will wait for you to say, yes, I'm ready to send this email. So it won't, even if I pick, send it at 10 a.m. tomorrow, if I haven't told Creatio that, yes, I'm done with this email, it's ready to send by clicking this schedule sending button, it's not going to send that email out. And I don't actually really want it to, so I'm not going to click that button. Once that email is sent, you will have access to a variety of statistics about the email. So under click stats, you can see a click heat map. So I can see 27 people clicked on this link. Nobody clicked on these social media icons. And I could scroll down and I could see a little bit more of that information below, just represented in a chart. I can also see under email totals, how many emails were delivered, what percentage were opened, were clicked, how many people unsubscribed or filed a spam complaint. This data is a little older. This email was sent last month, I think, in the demo environment. So this chart isn't showing us anything because it's time-based. But if you had just sent the email, it would show you like a time, how many people opened the email within the first hour, within the first day, that sort of thing. It will also show you email errors, so any sending errors, any delivery errors, specific categories of why the emails may not have gotten sent. And we will see a little bit later on how that data kind of rolls up to the, if we want to look at multiple emails at once, for example, with dashboards. I'm spending more time on this than I'd planned to, so I'm going to go ahead and continue on and go through the next few pieces pretty quickly. Before I talk about campaigns, I want to talk about some of the other things that can feed into them. So events, this is pretty simple functionality in Creatio. I wouldn't say it's super robust, but it's functional. It does what it needs to do. This allows you to track events that you were working on or part of. Dates, location, goal, budget, who's working on that event, as well as who the audience of that event is. So who have you invited to the event, who has registered for the event. Again, the status over here, the response status would show us, registered versus invited or attended, for example. And you might manage those event registrations through a landing page, for example. The landing page functionality in Creatio is, in my experience, one of the weaknesses in the marketing product. This is something that Creatio is working on. It's on their roadmap to change this, I think, within the next year. I think it was late 2020 was when they were planning that. So right now, what the product does is allow you or give you the code that you would need to add to a page that you build outside of Creatio. So you would still have to build the web page yourself using your website management tool. If you're using Drupal or WordPress or whatever, you would build the page on your website. And then once the page is built, it's got step-by-step instructions telling you of how to link that page that you've created to Creatio, so that when someone submits that form, it submits that data into Creatio as a lead or a contact or an event registration, wherever you want that data to go. They do have on their roadmap to build a drag and drop landing page designer. So that will get a lot more user friendly once they do that. You won't have to mess with code at that point. You can just build the page directly with a drag and drop tool. If you don't have a tool today to do that, there is a third-party tool called Sunny Landing Pages that has a connector available to Creatio where you can connect landing pages that you build in their drag and drop builder to Creatio. There is a minor subscription cost for Sunny Landing Pages, but it was pretty reasonably priced when I looked at it. So that is an option if you don't have another way to get those pages built currently, while you wait for Creatio to add that functionality to the marketing product. All right, I do want to spend some time in campaigns. I'm going to try to keep an eye on the clock a little better this time. So campaigns, again, are when you have that multi-step activity campaign, I guess there's really no other word for it, that you're doing in marketing. So you want to send a series of emails at different times to the same audience. You want to determine which email to send based on whether or not they did or didn't open the previous email, things like that. So this is an example campaign that has already, sort of been running, and then they paused it in the middle so that you could see what the data might look like at that point in time. A couple of things that I wanted to point out here. First of all, you can have different types of starting entrances into your campaign. So it might be a folder that you've defined in Creatio. It might be someone filling out one of those landing pages that you've connected to Creatio or registering for an event. It might even just be that you set up some filter criteria, and if they meet that criteria, they start into your campaign. That does mean that typically campaigns are designed to be more of a running over time function, meaning more people might start my campaign as it continues forward. So it could be that I'm doing it for one specific event or something that's going to only be this specific time period, but it might also be something that just runs on a regular basis. Anyone who fills out this interest form on my website, here's the series of emails that I send them after that, and whenever they enter the campaign, it's going to time out from there to send them those emails. You can see as you look at this email a variety of different branches within this process. So that might include things like filtering on data that's in Creatio. So in this case, they're sending a different email to customers versus partners. It might include things like, have they filled out a form? Have they clicked on a link in the email? And if not, then maybe we don't need to send them the next email because they haven't indicated they're interested. So you can segment on that behavior within a campaign as well. I do want to show you briefly at least what it looks like when you're building one of these. So I want to go ahead and open this one that I started earlier today. Let's just edit this. So this is designed to be very consistent in terms of the user experience with Creatio's process builder. It's very similar look and feel, very similar functionality. So if you've used the process designer in Creatio, this probably looks and feels pretty similar to you. You've got a series of different types of elements that you can use, and you just drag them out onto your canvas to use them, and then you can draw arrows to connect things to each other. So like I said, there are a couple different start types that you can have. You can start with a folder, which I think is what I did. Oh, no, that's this one. You can start with folder. You just pick what folder you want to start with your participants in. You can start with filter criteria. So maybe I already have a folder that defines my filter criteria, so then I use the add from folder campaign. But maybe I don't. Maybe I would be creating a folder just to use it for this campaign. I can actually skip that step and just every time someone's added or modified in such a way that they meet my criteria, I can go ahead and put them into my campaign. And then I can also start with an event or landing page so that I can use those as well to use as a starting point for my audience of those. When I want to control the timing of my email, I have a couple different ways I can do that. One way I can do that is just in the flow from one step to the next. I can put in a delay. So wait for a specific time period. And that could be a specific number of days or a specific number of hours before going on to the next step. The other thing I can do is I can put a timer element in here. And these tend to be a little bit more like specific days of the week that I want my emails to be sent out, or a specific date that I want to wait to, which is what I was doing here. I don't want to send my event follow-ups until the day after the event, so I could just put a specific date in and say, don't do anything until that specific date. But this can also be something like, on Mondays and Wednesdays from 10 a.m. to noon, that's when I want you to go on to the next step. And if it comes in to the campaign on a Tuesday, wait until Wednesday at 10 a.m. before continuing on to the next step. So it might be business days, it might be specific times of day that I want to send that might cause me to use those options. And then I can also do flows based off of interactions with the data. What am I not clicking on here? Oh, I closed this. That's my problem. There we go. All right. Sorry, it's been a long day. So when I'm setting up my flows, I have the option not only to put in a wait for a period, but also to determine whether or not to move forward to the next step. So I can either say, yes, everyone moves forward, or check the response before sending them forward. So in this case, I checked, did they click this specific link in this email before sending them on to the next one. If they didn't click the link, they would just kind of stay here. That'd be the end of my interaction with them. I wouldn't pass them along forward to my campaign. I could have an alternate branch coming off of here that says instead do this. I just chose not to do that in this particular example. And this one I did. So here I've got, if they participated, send them this email. So they actually showed up to my event. If they registered but didn't show up, send them this email instead. Maybe I'm going to change the wording of that email a little bit based off of that. All right. I think I'm going to go ahead and move on just because of time. Really briefly, the lead section. Again, I'm guessing that a lot of you probably use Creatio sales product already. So if you do, you probably are familiar with the lead section and the lead qualification and handoff process that's here. That same capability exists in the marketing product. So again, depending on who's qualifying the leads, is it sales, is it marketing, your marketing person could be doing this as well. It does have all of the same exact functionality as the lead section does in the marketing product. So that's going to include that predictive scoring capability. It's going to include the case management functionality where you can define a step-by-step process, as well as a default process in there to help you get started if you don't already have a process that you want to use. And then I do want to spend a few minutes talking about how you can use some of the data that you're collecting within your marketing activities. So we already saw, for example, within an email, we could see things like the opens and the clicks for that email. That would include both emails that we sent off as a one-time email, as well as emails that were a part of a campaign. So we can see within a campaign, not only kind of where is somebody overall, but also, how did any individual email perform in this particular campaign. All of that data then rolls up to dashboards. So we could do this within a specific section, look at email dashboards or event dashboards, or you've got your dashboard section that kind of brings everything together. Creatio gives you 5 dashboards to help you get started with this as a starting point. So again, pretty general, but as examples of things you can be doing. So you can be reporting on, for example, your number of campaigns. How many contacts are in the system versus how many of them are participating in campaigns. How many campaigns are we doing by month? How big is our audience by month, etc. Or you can do emails specific. How are my emails doing? How many emails have I sent? How many of them were opened? How many of them led to unsubscribes? What are some emails that are coming up or that I've recently sent? So I could click in and see more details maybe on an email that was sent, recently. Similarly, I can do reporting on my events. I can do reporting on my leads. What's my lead pipeline look like? And they do also give you a couple of widgets here to help you monitor how many contacts you're marketing to, which is related to your licensing for the marketing product. So I can see that I've got 141 active contacts here out of my 1,000 contact subscription. But then, like any other functionality in Creatio, you have the capability to build your own dashboard. So this is one that I created this morning, where you can decide, how do you want to view that data? So I wanted to see, how many opens and clicks do I have this month versus this year, for example. I could put that directly right here onto my dashboard. I can see, a chart showing my clicks and my opens by month, by email, however I want to view that data. And again, I don't want to dive too deep here because we've done a whole user group about dashboards, but this is set up the same way as any other dashboard. You just report on the response in email object, which is where it tracks those clicks and those opens. And you can do all of your email reporting. If you want to track on events, you could report on that event participant object, and you could see, those registrations, those attendances, what percentage of my people who registered came to my event, things like that. So again, you've got the whole Creatio platform behind this, so you can use all of that functionality that you may already be familiar with in Creatio for dashboards and filters and so on. All right, I do want to make sure I leave time for the kind of usual wrap up at the end here. So I'm going to go ahead and switch back to my PowerPoint. If you have any other questions, please feel free to pass those along. Really briefly, pricing is a little bit complicated, so I can't just put a number on a slide for you here because it's based on not only how many users you need, but also how many people you're sending emails to and how many emails you're going to be sending, which is pretty typical for all of the products in the marketing automation space. There is a really nice marketing pricing calculator on Creatio's website that you can use to kind of play with. Well, I think I'm going to have about this many contacts, about that many emails, and you can slide or increase those numbers, decrease those numbers, and see what that does to your price. So if you're interested in pricing, I would check that out. And that said, we're going to go ahead and kind of transition to the wrap up here. So release notes, there have been 2 new releases since our last user group. The first one was the 7.15.4 release. This one sort of continued a lot of what we've seen in the previous releases. So some updates to the campaign designer and the content block functions that you saw me using today. Some continued forecast improvements. The ability to view the details of business logic when you're seeing the case response time and resolution times, you can see how that was calculated. The account and contact pages, the address fields are now filtered the same way on the page as they are in the address detail so that they're consistent in how they work. And the process designer went through a pretty significant UI change in 7.15.4. It was in beta before that, where it got very simple. So they kind of simplified a lot of the options. Instead of having 25 buttons to choose from, you've got like 6 now, or something like that. And then you can modify your elements as you add them. The 7.16.0 release was announced about a week ago. Creatio did do a really nice webinar about this, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time talking about this because I'd recommend you check out their webinar. I want to say there was something like 300 new changes or something like that in this release. It was a significant release. So I've put a few highlights on the slide here, but really I would recommend checking out that webinar or the full release notes because it was far too much for me to try to capture on a slide.
Awesome. Thank you so much for taking us through that, Megan. Just a couple of upcoming events to be aware of. On April 30th, Creatio is going to do a webinar asking the question, will the way we do business change forever after the quarantine ends? And so they're going to be talking about their opinions on that. Again, all these links and things that we've been showing, don't worry about it. I'm going to send it to you, so you're good if you want to register for that. And then in addition, our sister company is going to be having a webinar on May 21st about the release of their Creatio and Xero integration. So that's going to be, if you use Xero and you're interested in connecting those applications, definitely recommend you check that out. Also, yeah, I just noticed that I put April 30th on here. That might, yeah, good call to our participant who just pointed that out. I don't know if that's today or not. Let me double check that. But I will send the link regardless in case it was already happening and we want to follow up, but that might be May 30th. Sorry for that. But if you're thinking about getting Creatio marketing or you want to see a more personalized demo or get your full team on it, let us help you. I'm going to send a follow-up email with the links, as I mentioned, to this presentation with the pricing link that Megan showed a couple slides ago. I'll send you the video of our folders and dashboards user group if you didn't have a chance to be on that with us when we did that. I'll make sure that you're able to see that because a lot of what Megan was referencing today goes back to that. And then also I'm just gonna send you all, if you want to start a discussion about Creatio marketing, you can always reach out to our sales team at that email address that I just sent over. But then as always, if you have questions or just a follow-up comment even, you're always welcome to just reply to the follow-up email that I send you because that response will come to me. I'll be able to see that right away and I can help you with whatever you need. So thank you all for joining us today. Thank you again, Megan, and expect some more information tomorrow.